and welcome to all of you who's joining number 3 in our webinar series on vision, which we see as an essential dimension of great leadership. Vision means getting ready for the future and undoubtedly changing things so you're ready. And part of any change programme involves evaluating of risk. What might go wrong if the change doesn't work out as expected? And so we're delighted to welcome Luke Taylor, founder of the Risk Reward Awards. It's a body that seeks to promote the best work being done by risk professionals in the communications industry and at the same time raising money for charity. Luke has had many roles in many associations to do with mitigating, considering risk, not least of which are in the Group Spécial Mobile Authority, the Communications Fraud Control Association. So we couldn't be in better hands this lunchtime. Thanks very much, Luke, and over to you now.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me today. As Kate and Jane have introduced me, I'll just summarise briefly about myself. As Kate mentioned, I'm the founder of Risk Reward Awards, which is a non-profit organisation focusing on risk management and recognising the contribution by individuals, companies, vendors and consultants, etc., to the industry to try and increase innovation and recognition and financing and budgets within the risk management sector. I'm also a member of different associations, and I'm a steering committee member of the Risk and Assurance Group, which is also a non-profit organisation focusing on collaboration and cooperation in the telecom risk industry. I also work as a business consultant and advisor and work for many different companies looking at how they can move forward in that next major step in their own business in regards to expansion and new verticals, as well as assisting companies looking at exit strategies and flotations and trade sales, etc. As Kate mentioned, I've previously worked for a company, a software company called Neural Technologies, which was focused in risk management and telecommunications and finance industries. We had over 6 offices around the world, 170 people, 60 customers, etc., which were utilising software solutions and consultancy service to mitigate financial loss in regarding fraud control, revenue assurance, credit risk, etc. If we can go to the next slide. I have to apologise. Actually, I'm doing this on my mobile phone because I have no internet connection today. So I'm using the benefit of my assistant Jane to move to the next slide. So I'm just going to introduce quickly the dimensions of leadership. I'm here today to talk about one feature of that. This has been formulated by the Institute of Leadership and Management. They've identified 5 separate dimensions of great leadership, and namely they are authenticity, achievement, ownership, collaboration and vision. And the dimension of authenticity is the one in the middle, which is the foundation where the other 4 pillars are built upon. Today, sorry, if we go to the next slide, today I'm talking about one sub-dimension within the vision dimension. As Kate and Jane mentioned, there's 49 webinars in different areas of this dimensions of leadership. And I'm talking about one specific feature within the vision dimension, which is evaluating risk. And that's basically looking at how we can look at leaders and managers within the business to foresee potential risks and manage those risks as they move forward in business and strategic initiatives. So if we go to the next slide, which is the title page, Visionary Leaders Identifying and Evaluating Risk. Over the next 20 minutes or so, I'm just going to try and talk briefly around some areas of evaluating risk within business, understanding risk, managing risk, and measuring risk. It's recognised in business, obviously, to compete and differentiate from your peers, you need to constantly adapt and innovate. And that requires businesses to, in some cases, undertake risky strategies and initiatives to move themselves forward and generate new revenues, etc., and expand. But it's also recognised, obviously, there's barriers to kind of adaptation and innovation within business. People sometimes have a kind of a legacy thinking mindset, if you wish. You know, I remember when we used to do it like this. You know, and also things like lack of vision and strategy of where your business and company are going, and also potentially misalignment within your business amongst your shareholders, your management and your partners in regarding where you'll be taking your business. And also there's obviously the fear of the unknown. What will happen when you move forward in regarding new strategies and initiatives? How will they proceed? How will they be successful? What will be the barriers within those? But all those can be managed, I think, with proactive risk management strategies and management of the and collaboration, if you wish, within departments within business to mitigate such aspects. There are, a number of different sayings, but John F. Kennedy had a very good quote, which was, "There are risks and costs to a program of action, but they are far less than the long-range risks and costs of comfortable inaction." And this is very true for business. If you don't act and look to evolve and adapt and keep up, you obviously will suffer by being comfortable in action. And we've seen that with many different companies in the past, the likes of Kodak, who never foresaw the digital photography evolution. We've seen that with Nokia, who once had a successful handset phone business, but didn't foresee the touchscreen smartphone technology taking off so quickly. So you need to obviously constantly look to adapt and evolve and look at new innovations and how they can be maximized with your business. And obviously that does take risk, financial risk, as well as risk in regarding resources, operations, etc. If we go to the next slide, please. So what is risk? Risk we face every day. I mean, we face it subconsciously, if you wish, when we step out the front door of our homes and go to work. Will the train be on time? If the train's delayed, how do we circumnavigate in regarding getting to the office in a timely manner? We buy houses, we take out mortgages, we buy cars on financing. We take risks within certain aspects, in some ways subconsciously, without really thinking about those aspects. But when it comes to business, we sometimes are a bit more risk adverse and more risk aware because we have obviously other responsibilities. As leaders, we have responsibilities to our customers, to our employees, to our employers, to our partners, to our shareholders, to HMRC, etc. There's lots of different people and facets that we're responsible for, and we obviously need to look at how we undertake risk. But obviously undertaking risk does mean that we differentiate ourselves as a company, and obviously we've seen very successful stories in the news. If you look at moving forward with risk, we can, it's detrimental to how we go forward as a business. Sorry, if we can go to the next slide. So what are the benefits of risk? I think we've all seen in the press with the likes of people like Elon Musk, the Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, etc., where they've taken risks in business, looked at new innovations, looked at where a consumer demand will be, and taken risks in regarding moving forward on certain aspects. Some of those have been risks in regarding being patient. Steve Jobs of Apple was very patient in regarding the technologies such as touchscreens, etc., and regarding when they would be popular. And he was utilizing technology that he actually didn't invent, but maximized that technology within his own services and products, and that required patience. So it's not always looking at risks to compete. Sometimes it's a waiting game. And all these individuals have obviously taken risks financially, as well as within their own business in regarding operations. And Elon Musk has been very successful in regarding battery-powered cars. He's had a huge marketing initiative and been very successful. He's now got a demand that he can't deliver those cars quick enough based on consumers requiring them and putting down deposits. So there's always an aspect of when you move forward with a new strategy. If it's successful, you've got to obviously look at how you can manage those scenarios. We've also had others, obviously, such as larger corporations. There's a company called Oracle, which is a large database company. They kind of were late to marketing regarding cloud computing services. They realized they were late to that market, and they made a very drastic strategic decision that they needed to focus on cloud computing, and they invested millions and multi-millions of investments to make that occur, change their whole strategy regarding sales and initiatives and activities to migrate their company from a legacy hardware and software company to a cloud services company. That's a large risk, and they've monitored and measured that on a continual basis, and now they are competing with the likes of Amazon and Microsoft and IBM in that market space. But that does take risk, and it does take measured risk. And if you understand what risk is not a negative word, and you don't have to be classed as a maverick if you undertake risks. Risks are, if taken, normally managed, understood, there's not a, it's not a risk, if you wish. We are now obviously living in a very disruptive environment. New technologies are coming out. New markets are being introduced. The traditional commerce and business activities are being threatened by more smaller players and startups. So the market has changed, and people have to look at how they adapt and compete in those spaces. If we can go to the next slide, please, Jane. So in risk, any new initiative, any new strategy, any new project undertaken by a business has many different aspects of organisational risk, if you wish. There's the strategic risk of obviously keeping up with your peers and moving forward to maximise new technologies, consumer demand, etc., and how that your business needs to react and evolve to retain or maintain its customer base and attract new customer base. We have the financial aspect, of course, in regarding investments, recruitment, in regarding competing or meeting the demands or meeting the requirements of these new initiatives. We have operational aspects in regarding looking at how we can distribute, supply the goods and services, how we can deliver, how we can produce software, etc. There's a number of different aspects that could cause risks that need to be attributed. There's obviously aspects like compliance. In the UK now, there's obviously things like GDPR, there's SOX compliance, lots of different regulations in different industries that are required to ensure the business is managed correctly. And we've seen examples in the past where compliance has been detrimental to businesses. We've had TalkTalk, who was fined $400,000 in regarding data leakage issues. We've had Vodafone fined by Ofgem regarding £4.6 million because of issues with their billing, etc. So compliance and regulation, we are going into more regulated markets, do need to be assessed for risk. And there's obviously other aspects such as things that we can't account for, such as severe weather, everyone falling down with a flu, etc., where we have to look at how we can mitigate such risks. There's obviously lots of surveys out there regarding insurance companies such as Eon and Ernst Young Alliance, etc., and the World Economic Forum to identify what business risks are out there, and there's obviously changing on a yearly basis. But things like business interruption, cyber incidents, funding, credit facilities, etc., are all aspects where businesses are concerned or assessed as a risk to their own business in regarding moving forward, and those change across the globe, and depending on which markets developing or mature markets in regarding what other aspects may come into account, social instability, political instability, macroeconomic developments, etc. They all need to be taken into account when looking at risk. And all projects should be looking at, or initiatives should be looking at across all those spectrums of potential risk to their business to ensure when they move forward with an initiative or a strategy or a project that these are taken into account. So managing risk. Managing risk is something that is a collaborative approach. You need as many people as you can from different departments and different services that touch different aspects of your business as well as your customers to ensure that anything you move forward with as a strategic initiative or a project, be it a new vertical, a software development, etc., is being reviewed by many different departments, because those people will be able to contribute different aspects and facets to the working day-to-day life with the consumer, with the customer, with their own business, in regarding how things can move forward. Larger corporations have sometimes a kind of inherent hierarchy for such things, and when a senior management or a business unit make a decision, it's usually assessed to see if it aligns with obviously the strategic roadmap of the company, and if it's not, obviously there's some assessment, and there's usually a second line of review regarding how these things can be moved forward. And so there's usually a compliance or kind of a risk function within business to look at how those things can be moved forward. And these could be from small aspects, from new marketing initiatives for new, attracting new consumers in a consumer-based business, or actually, as I mentioned before, such as Oracle, where you're changing your business strategy dramatically, and you're realigning different departments and your sales teams, etc., to refocus on what they're undertaking. And that needs to go through obviously different hierarchies of assessment and review to ensure that happens, and that may go to an internal audit to assess the likelihood of these things being successful. And obviously smaller companies, those kind of hierarchies are not always available, and so you need to obviously look at how you can do these yourselves. And you need to bring in everyone from marketing, financial, legal, compliance, sales, development, professional services, support, etc., into these initiatives to ensure that you're recognising all the potential risks of taking forward any strategic activity. We've seen obviously this week Kentucky Fried Chicken have their own problems in regarding distribution. And you have to ask yourself, did they look at the potential risk of changing their distribution partner to progress, with maybe a new commercially more attractive deal, but obviously that's impacted them as a business and as a reputation. And it should have been in place that they had, two distribution companies running in parallel? Should they tested and dry tested the new distribution partner, etc.? All these things need to be looked at in some way. It's obviously no one's going to be perfect in taking risk strategies. There's always something that's going to come out, but it's how you can react in a timely manner and understand and bringing people from different aspects and departments of your business to see how you can overcome them. I mentioned Vodafone previously. Vodafone last year, or late 2016, had huge issues with their CRM and billing migration project, which impacted their consumers dramatically. And until they realized that the consumer demand in regarding queries and support calls and customer complaints were increasing, they started to realize that there was a drastic issue, and they put in risk mitigation strategies. They recruited more support consultants and contractors. They looked at the product and the project going forward and how they could reverse and go back different versions to reduce as much as they could the changes in billing parameters, etc. So they try to react, and it is a reaction when obviously these things happen. You have to look at how you can react. So bringing in people to identify the potential risks that could come up within your strategic initiative, and then assessing that regarding is this valid? Is this project potentially going to cost more than it's going to return, etc.? All those things need to be evaluated, and if it's acceptable, then you need to monitor that on an ongoing basis. And it is a project in its own right, and probably needs to follow similar project initiatives and practices to ensure that you're constantly monitoring internally those initiatives, as well as obviously outside parameters and aspects that could impact that success of that project. It's that monitoring and proactive collaboration that makes these things occur. And then it's, if you have to reassess as part of these mitigation strategies of what you have to undertake, which could be drastic or it could be minor. These things obviously need buy-in from all departments and all stakeholders. So measuring risk, and obviously having which is obviously everyone knows, a plan B is always prudent. And as I mentioned before, there's been the KFCs, the Vodafones of the world, where there's been issues and they've needed to look at a plan B to mitigate risk. Vodafone's issue, which was an IT issue, impacted their business. Their share price fell 15%. They were fined £4.6 million by the regulator. These are quite drastic impacts of an initiative or a project where risk mitigation hasn't been fully reviewed. So they needed to look for a plan B to try and resurrect or resolve some of the issues they were facing. So everyone needs to look at looking at all the aspects to ensure that they can find a strategy that's as watertight as possible. It's never going to be watertight because there is always risk in certain things, but it's understanding the likelihood of such risks occurring and how they can be managed going forward. All in such aspects of when things go badly wrong, if these risks haven't been documented, listed, or understood as part of that initial assessment and review and identification, then it's going to be harder to react and resolve. And so understanding those from day one is crucial. It is sometimes somewhat a painful exercise to look at projects in the context of being devil's advocate, if you wish, but putting all those things down to ensure that when you do press that button to go forward, that there is a kind of much of an understanding of all the potential aspects that could go wrong. And that could be from monitoring the budget of activities in regarding projects, resource in regarding recruitment. All these things have impacts. If you can't recruit quick enough in regarding the right skill sets for certain aspects, then that will impact your business. So there's so many different facets, and some of those are minor and some of those are major, but they all need to be understood and visible to the business. One feature that can be undertaken within any kind of project in regarding a strategic move forward in regarding new vision for the business is looking at maybe producing a kind of a risk scorecard and assessing the risk level of all those aspects that you've identified and how, if they're minor, significant, and the impact regarding low and high, etc. And producing that scorecard regarding a project or an initiative will allow you to assess the validity of this initiative being successful or how risky it is. And that can be then obviously delivered to the management, the shareholders, however high the decision has to go in regarding how this project or initiative will be moved forward. And having a scorecard at least gives some kind of clarity to the potential risks and areas that you may want to focus on in regarding investment of time, effort, or financial resource, etc. And to do those things. All the departments, if they can be involved for that analysis and adding their input is obviously crucial to get that kind of full understanding and that risk metric to allow it to happen. Sorry, if we go to the next slide, Jane. And then obviously risk mapping. Now, many people have probably seen similar diagrams before. I've done many of these things in regarding drawing on whiteboards and lots of post-it notes, etc. Decision trees in regarding how projects move forward. They can be done on a whiteboard, as I said, or a post-it note. There's software for these kind of things. It allows a visibility and a simplification of all the scenarios and decisions that may need to be acquired to move any project or strategy forward. And having such a process in place gives some structure, it gives some visibility to all the stakeholders, the people that are running the project on the coalface, as well as obviously the senior management. And it gives that visibility in regarding how things will progress and what decisions need to be made based on certain criteria or aspects happening. And I've done similar in my own businesses before. When you're marketing in this diagram, where you're maintaining or attracting new business from your existing customers, and also needing to launch new products to remain competitive, you need to look at how you can invest, time, money, and resources to progress those going forward. And they need to be assessed in regarding, the return potentially based on your calculations of making sales over a certain period of time, and what that will be regarding return on investment. What's the impact of entering a new market, the maturity of that market, the maturity of your own business and software, etc. And all those things putting into a decision tree allows you to kind of focus on the areas that may, they may be bread and butter in certain aspects of your business, but sometimes they can be overlooked, and you need to assess them obviously on a constant basis. And fundamentally, in all the underlying discussions I've had today, it is a constant monitoring and collaboration that's required. It's not an insular or a singular activity. No one makes a decision in business usually and follows through. It does require a huge amount of people collaborating, and that instills obviously motivations and positive attitudes as well within your business, and allows people to contribute in many different areas. Basically, all strategies are, all strategies in business are not always going to be successful, and some will be successful, some won't. But if you undertake, a risk strategy, understand all the potential risks, you can at least mitigate some of those risks or some of those impacts of those risks, and assess when you can make a decision on how you move that project or initiative forward. Does it need to change? And all businesses need to adapt and constantly evolve. No strategy is hard-coded. It needs to evolve as different environments and different third-party external activities occur. And it's having that capability to react and move your strategies in regarding those influences is obviously crucial. I think if we go to the next slide, we've just got some references of some of the information that's used in the evaluating risk brochure supplied by the Institute of Leadership and Management. I think I'm running out of time, I believe, actually, so it's been pretty short in this webinar. If you've got any other questions, I hope to hear from them shortly.
Thank you, Luke. We have some questions coming in. We're obviously running out of time, but it was so interesting, and we appreciate you trying to cram it all into 30 minutes. In your experience, what are the main barriers to organisations taking the big risks? For example, a change of business model or new markets. What's the things you hear that stop those things happening?
It's from my experience, it's usually financial, the financial impact in regarding moving into a new business and the investment that requires. Is that investment coming internally? Does it require external investment? And if it's not successful, what's the impact of that investment being spent, etc. Reputation. If that new strategy doesn't work, what's the impact on the business? Those are some of the usual ones that come up. We're in a business, we're making reasonable money, and we want to look at changing, but do we want to change because we're happy here? And they may be happy there for a while, but obviously the markets are changing, the environment, the business and consumer markets are changing all the time, and some people unfortunately have to make that kind of proactive, forward-thinking decision, because those, your business will always change. And I think mostly it's being too comfortable sometimes, and being comfortable is because you've been very successful in your business, but it's now sometimes needs to change, and it's usually that financial and reputational aspects that are usually the ones that are hard to overcome.
Thank you to Luke and Kate, and thank you to everyone for attending today's webinar.